that great artists in different parts of the world have. That finally they rise above the region, the language, the time, and they say things or they create characters who become a model of conduct, of goodness for centuries to come. Now, coming to the subject on which I'm going to try to stimulate some of your thinking, coming to this subject, multilingual theatre and its history in India, I am going to talk not just about history, but about what you can do today and in future. Because you are performing artists. You are preparing yourself to do something on the stage, live, so that the audience can see you. And it is in this moment, if you do something which is creative, which is very new, then you would not only have the great joy of experiencing your art, but also contributing to where you are performing, to the region, to the nation, and even beyond. Now, why have I chosen this subject, multilingual theatre? You will ask me, where does multilingual theatre exist? Because all of us, and especially you who are perhaps under 35 or 30, they have only seen one language theatre, not only in India, but even outside India. So today, that is for last almost 100 years in India, we have a single language theatre. So there is Tamil theatre, there is Hindi theatre, there is Bangla theatre, etc., etc. At least in India, we have theatre in many languages. In most nations, it is one language because most nations, particularly the European nations, they were formed from 17th century onwards on the basis of the language they speak. So you would say, what is this multilingual theatre? Where does it come from? Is it ancient? Is it medieval? Is it modern? Was it ever practiced, or this is just a figment of your imagination, Professor? You've come up here with an idea of multilingual theatre, but did it ever exist? Did it exist in China, in Japan, in Greece, in Europe? Where? Well, historically speaking, it existed only in one place, and that is Bharat, that is India. In ancient times, Indian theatre was entirely multilingual. Now, when I say this, you will simply come and say that, look, what was there in ancient times? In ancient times, it was Sanskrit theatre, what we call Sanskrit theatre. There was nothing like multilingual theatre. When we think of Kalidas, when we think of Bhasa or Shudraka or any other ancient playwright, then we say, this is ancient times, Sanskrit. So this is Sanskrit theatre. And for the last 150 years, in all books, in all textbooks, in all departments, in all theatre departments, in Sanskrit departments, everybody is using the term Sanskrit theatre. But let me tell you that in India, in ancient times or medieval times, there was nothing like Sanskrit theatre. The language Sanskrit was only 5 to 10% of a total performance. They used several languages. So, some characters, the hero, and sometimes not even the hero, would be speaking Sanskrit. Other characters would be speaking the common language of the times. So, if we talk of the famous play, the iconic play of ancient times, Shakuntala, Abhigyan Shakuntalam, Kalidas's, then in that play, only Dushyant, the royal king, speaks Sanskrit, but Shakuntala speaks a different language. She speaks a vernacular. She speaks a Prakrit. And she was not even called Shakuntala. She was called Saundala by her friends. Hale Saundale. So it was not a unilingual Sanskrit theatre. This is a misconception. People from different parts of India spoke their languages. So if there was a character from south of India, he would speak a South Indian language. One of the languages mentioned in Natya Shastra is Dramil. Dramil is the older name, as you know, for Tamil. So it is clear there that if a character comes from the south, then he would speak in that language. Somebody coming from present day Bengal would be speaking a language prevalent at that time. So there were 5 or 6 or 7 languages which were spoken. Now, for you or me, in the present day world, this is inconceivable. They'll say, how did the people understand? How did the audience understand what was going on? No, they understood because theater was not just a speech. Theater, a theatrical performance, was not just dialogue. It was not just speech. It was acting, it was angik abhinay, it was many kinds of gestures, it was many kinds of positions of hand. So you use the whole body as a language. You practice dance, there was music, very complicated kinds of music, many kinds of instruments, many other activities of various kinds suitable to the play. If it was a play on war where there was fighting, then all that would be shown. So if you have a duel going on, suppose if Bhim and Duryodhan are shown fighting on the stage, right? What you are interested in is the fight, not what they are saying to each other once in a while. So you will either follow that language or get a vague idea, but you would enjoy the gesture, you would enjoy the body movement. So the body movement, the music, the costume, and the formation on the stage, that was far more important than just the dialogue. And therefore, people enjoyed multilingual theater or theater with many languages. Now, what was the thinking behind, what was the thinking behind this principle of production, this idea of making a play? There was one very simple principle which they followed, and that was that we have to show on the stage what is seen in life. So, what is seen in the world, what is seen in Loka, what is seen around you, what is seen in the village, in the small town, in the farm, or in the royal palace, or the city streets, all that kind of life and characters and people, their habits, their manner of speech, their language, all that has to be represented on the stage. Because theater recreates what is happening in the world outside. It doesn't copy it. It just doesn't try to bring everything that is on the in the world, especially things which are unhealthy, immoral, or obnoxious. No, it has a selection process. It does it with a purpose to elevate you, to give you good ideas, to instill good behavior, to have better values in life. But it does not hide anything. It does not suppress anything. So there are plays in ancient times which are farces, prahasanas, which show that there are teachers and scholars who don't really do any work, but only take a lot of money. There are students who don't attend classes, or what is now called classes, or go to study. So they show that aspect of reality. They show kings who are not responsible towards their people. And then they show people who are absolutely immoral and who are cheating. Or they show people who have too many ambitions and who are willing to transgress and do things which are forbidden or oppress women. All that has been part of the ancient stage, but multilingually. So, Indian theatre was that you can contact any scholar of ancient languages, somebody who reads Sanskrit or who reads the old Prakrits like Magadhi. Magadhi was the language which was spoken in Bihar. Then there was another language called Ardha Magadhi, which was spoken from Bihar till UP. Then there was a Okar language spoken in Bengal and Odisha. Even today, Bengalis, they tend to put O in the word. So instead of bhajan, they'll say bhojan. So one doesn't know if they are talking of food or if they are talking of devotion. This was the tendency even 3000 years, 2500 years ago, when this text Natya Shastra was written. This was the manner of speech, this was the style of speech. So, all these ancient languages lasted. And similarly, there was language in central India, and there was language in North India, Prachya, Baliki, and in Rajasthan, uh, there was another language, and then, of course, the languages of the southern part of India. They all were reflected in a play, and there were people who mastered some of these dialects. You see, good actors do it. They do it even now. 2 years ago, people from National School of Drama, our third year students, they came. They went to a village close by here to learn Terukutu, and they did a whole 1.5 hour performance in Tamil, and it was done here. Uh, Ye- yes, last year, and then it was performed in Pondicherry, and it was performed in Delhi. Four performances at India Gate. So actors have always been doing this. They are open to learning languages, doing new things, things which are not part of their mother tongue, and so on and so forth. And this has been the Indian tradition. Now you will ask me the question, how is it that this tradition died out? What happened? You see, uh, the tradition of Indian theatre went under many changes because of political dispensation and because of social conditions. Till about 9th, 10th century, ancient theatre was flourishing very well. But with the advent of Islam, it became impossible to do city performances because Islam forbade theatre. There was music in the courts in that time, but something like a public performance could not be held. So the whole ancient tradition, the multilingual tradition of India, it disappeared from the cities, particularly in the north entirely. And the artists, they went into the countryside, into various ashramas or surviving temples in the city, in the country, or in certain religious mathas, and they performed there. So this is the time when you had the birth of various so-called traditional arts like Kudiyattam, Kathakali, Mohiniyattam in one region, Odissi, etc. in the other region, in Tanjore region, the temple dances of another kind. So the regular theatre, urban theatre, which was the long tradition, it suffered a big loss. And all the artists of this tradition, they got dispersed into various parts of the country, and they preserved the ancient art through what we now call the traditional arts, the names of which I have taken. Now you find that in these traditional arts, still multilingual theatre is used. For instance, Kudiyattam, they use Sanskrit, they use Malayalam, and in some parts of Kudiyattam, they even use Tulu. The dialogue is spoken in Tulu also. So they use two or three languages. Similarly, in various parts of the countries, they are able to speak the urban dialect and the local dialect. And they are very free in importing it and innovating it, especially because it depends upon their creativity. But because theatre was virtually forbidden in the cities, it died out because there was hardly any urban theatre, let us say in 15th, 16th, 17th century, particularly in the north. Therefore, urban theatre disappeared. And Indian urban theatre was an all India theatre. Companies traveled from one part of the country to another, from deep south to the north. Poets like Bhartrihari in 3rd century BC are mentioning the beauty of the singers from the south, that these are very special singers. We have a great opportunity to listen to them. So that's one evidence of how artists traveled from one part of the country to another constantly. But there is a lot of evidence on that. We can have a talk about that some other time. What happens to urban theatre? Urban theatre is revived at the end of 17th century by the British. The British start doing theatre again. It first starts as theatre done for their wives and children. For the elite class, it was done in cantonments and town halls, which were under the British control. And it is at that time that this revived theatre. But this was not Indian theatre, this was English theatre. In imitation of that, people started writing in Indian languages. And it is at this time that several kinds of performances and several kind of theater genres, new theater genres came into existence. But they were always monolingual. For instance, in Maharashtra, I'm sure there are a couple people or more than two or three people from Maharashtra here. They developed a form called Sangeet Natak, in which there is a lot of singing. A song is sung in classical music, but the language of that theater was Marathi and Marathi only. Then they had Parsi theater, in which Urdu was used. They used this language, Urdu, for Parsi theater. And the stories were usually from Alif Laila and Arabic lands, etc. But it was again a monolingual theater. It again flourished in Bombay and in that region. And so many great artists of Parsi theatre were the pioneers in film industry till almost 1945 or 50, like Sohrab Modi and others. They all got trained in that Parsi theatre. So theatre became slowly and slowly unilingual. And when it was revived all over India, it became either Marathi theatre or Hindi theatre or Bangla theatre or so Michael Madhusudan Datta, he wrote his play in Bangla. They started writing Bengali plays. In Hindi, Jai Shankar Prasad, etc. And then they all started imitating the model of Shakespeare, in which dialogue was the important thing. Speech was the important thing. The gesture disappeared. So they were either imitating George Bernard Shaw, contemporary writer, early 19th, early 20th century, or they were imitating the style of Shakespeare, and thus theatre was born. This continues. Indian theatre even today is divided between urban theatre and so-called folk theatre or traditional theatre or theatre that belongs to the old tradition. So if you want to see a proper theatrical performance of the old type, you will have to go to something like Bhama Kalapam done in Kuchipudi, right? Which has song and dance and drama and speech, and in one or two languages or dialects. But the urban theatre in Hyderabad or any other part of Andhra, Telangana would be a European theatre. So this is the situation all over the country today. And the themes and the style and the form of the theatre, the two theatres is very different. What is now being promoted for almost 50, 70 years along with films is the urban theatre. The traditional theatre is losing its patronage. Who gives patronage? Sangeet Natak Academy. If you want to perform Kudiyatam, if Margi Madhu has to perform for 2 hours, nobody will invite him to perform in Pondicherry or Chennai or even Delhi. Only Sangeet Natak Academy or Government of India or Ministry of Culture. Or maybe they can hold some performances in Guru Vayur or some temple premises, and that is also not very popular now. That's also fading. So, Indian theatre is divided thus. What is the future? How can we come out of this? How can you, as young theatre people, be innovative? This is the million rupee question, right? This is the most important question. First of all, we can make our theatre multilingual. It need not be as multilingual to begin with as it was in ancient times, but at least you can have two languages or three languages. If you are writing, let us say, in Tamil, then a certain section of people can speak Tamil, some can speak a bit of English, and some can speak another dialect. Maybe if in that place somebody who has come from Telangana can speak Telugu or he can speak Malayalam. And if such a performance is done, I am sure 80% of the audience will be able to follow what is going on. So you can write a multilingual theater even today. That happens in Indian films, but only as a joke. In Hindi films, they show people from the south speaking Hindi in strong South Indian accent, but that is done just in order to make fun of them. And the reverse is done in Tamil films. But let us take that seriously. Let us not just make them a butt of ridicule. If that is done seriously, then good, serious plays can come into existence today. Because your themes are the same, your social concerns are the same, your national issues are the same, your youth problems are the same, your man woman relationship problems are the same all over the country. And you can even touch upon problems that go beyond the country, which are global, and that can be done. I'm not suggesting that you have five foreign languages. No, I'm talking only of a reality because theater depends on an audience. Unless you have a real audience and an audience which has come to see your play on its own will, not a captive audience, you cannot have any theatrical innovation. If this is done, you will have an audience which will begin to like multilingual theater. And then you would have an audience which is wider. Because today you are constricted by a single language theater. If you are a Tamil theater actress, then Tamil Nadu is your region. But if the new multilingual theater comes into existence, you will have a much wider audience. Sooner or later, you will have an all India audience. There are many things more which can be introduced. Many other techniques and dramatic devices and modern technology can be used. And it will be all along the principles of ancient drama. And that will create a new artistic form. So I have given you an idea about what can be a possible area of innovation. I shall be very happy now to take your questions and have a discussion on them. So please put up your questions.